In the heart of Egypt, beneath centuries of sand and stone, archaeologists have uncovered something that should not exist. A map. Ancient beyond measure. Depicting lands that were not supposed to be known for thousands of years. This is not a medieval chart. This is not a relic from the age of exploration. This is a 5,000-year-old document that appears to show the coastlines of North and South America with disturbing accuracy. The implications are staggering. If this map is authentic, then everything we have been taught about ancient civilizations, about the discovery of the New World, about the limits of human knowledge in antiquity, must be reconsidered. Could the ancient Egyptians have possessed knowledge of continents across an ocean they were never supposed to have crossed? Did they inherit this information from an even older civilization now lost to time? Or does this discovery point to something far more unsettling about the true history of our species? What you are about to hear will challenge the foundations of accepted history. It will force you to question the narrative that has been constructed over centuries. And it will leave you wondering what other secrets lie buried beneath the sands, waiting to overturn everything we think we know. The map exists. The question is, how? To understand the magnitude of this discovery, we must first understand ancient Egypt itself. This was a civilization that emerged around 3,000 years before the Common Era. The pyramids were already ancient when Cleopatra walked the earth. The span of Egyptian history is so vast that it challenges human comprehension. The Egyptians were master builders, astronomers, and mathematicians. They aligned their monuments with celestial precision. They developed complex hieroglyphic writing systems. They mummified their dead with chemical processes that modern science has struggled to replicate. Yet, according to mainstream archaeology, their world was limited. Confined to the Mediterranean basin and the known regions of Africa and the Near East, the official narrative tells us that ancient cartography was primitive. The Egyptians created maps, certainly, but these were functional documents for tax collection, land management, and military campaigns. The oldest surviving Egyptian maps show mines, quarries, and local geography. Nothing that suggests global awareness. The known world, as understood by scholars, consisted of the Mediterranean civilizations, parts of Africa, and portions of Asia. The Atlantic Ocean was a barrier, not a highway. The Americas were isolated, undiscovered, unknown. This was the consensus. This was the accepted truth, but what if that consensus was built on incomplete evidence? What if the Egyptians possessed knowledge that never made it into the surviving records? What if the catastrophic loss of the Library of Alexandria took with it evidence of ancient global contact? The map that has now been discovered forces us to ask these questions. It exists in defiance of what should be possible. It sits in a laboratory, carbon-dated, analyzed, authenticated. And it shows lands that the Egyptians were never supposed to have seen. How do we reconcile this? How do we explain a document that predates Columbus by 45 centuries? The discovery occurred during a routine archaeological survey in the western desert of Egypt. A team from an international university was documenting a series of ancient storage chambers near a long-forgotten temple complex. These chambers had been sealed for millennia, protected from the elements by the dry desert climate. Inside one of these chambers, beneath layers of pottery shards and textile fragments, researchers found a sealed stone container. The container itself was remarkable, carved from limestone with hieroglyphic inscriptions that suggested sacred or royal significance. The seals were intact. Whatever was inside had not been disturbed since antiquity. When the container was carefully opened under controlled laboratory conditions, the team discovered a rolled document. Not papyrus, which was common, but something far more durable. A form of treated leather that had been prepared with extraordinary care. The preservation was unprecedented. The material had survived 5,000 years in near-perfect condition. As the document was slowly, painstakingly unrolled, the archaeologists expected to find religious texts, administrative records, or perhaps astronomical observations. What they found instead left them in stunned silence. The document was covered in markings, symbols, and carefully drawn lines. It was clearly a map. But the geography it depicted was unlike anything they had seen before. The coastlines were unfamiliar. The landmasses were wrong. This was not Egypt. This was not the Mediterranean. This was not the known ancient world. Initial reactions ranged from confusion to disbelief. Some team members suggested it was a mythological document, a representation of the Egyptian afterlife or some symbolic geography. Others immediately noticed something far more disturbing. The shapes, the proportions, the relative positions of certain features bore an uncanny resemblance to the continents of North and South America, but that was impossible. The document had been sealed in a context that dated it to approximately 3,000 years before the Common Era. Columbus would not reach the Caribbean for another 45 centuries. The Vikings would not touch North American shores for another 4,000 years. No ancient Mediterranean civilization was supposed to have any knowledge of the Western Hemisphere, yet here was a map, undeniably ancient, undeniably Egyptian, showing what appeared to be precisely that forbidden knowledge. The team secured the site immediately. The map was transported under armed guard to a secure facility. And a process began that would shake the archaeological community to its core. The first step was authentication. Carbon dating of the leather material yielded results that confirmed the initial context dating. The map was between 4,800 and 5,200 years old. Multiple laboratories independently verified these results. The material itself was genuinely ancient. Next came the analysis of the inks and pigments used to create the markings. These too proved to be consistent with known Egyptian materials from the early dynastic period. Mineral-based pigments, organic binders, techniques that matched other verified artifacts from the same era. There was no indication of modern contamination or forgery, but authentication of age and materials was only the beginning. The real question was interpretation. What exactly did the map show? High-resolution imaging revealed extraordinary detail. The mapmaker had used a sophisticated system of projection, accounting for the curvature of the Earth in ways that were not supposed to be understood until much later in human history. The coastlines were rendered with careful attention to geographic features. Inlets, peninsulas, river mouths, all were marked with precision. When digital overlay techniques were applied, comparing the ancient map with modern satellite imagery, the results were shocking. The eastern coastline of North America matched with startling accuracy. The Gulf of Mexico was clearly identifiable. The distinctive shape of the Florida Peninsula was present. The Caribbean islands were marked in approximately correct positions. Moving south, the map showed what could only be the northern coast of South America. The bulge of Brazil was unmistakable. The mouth of a massive river system, precisely where the Amazon empties into the Atlantic, was clearly indicated. This should not exist. The level of geographic knowledge required to create such a map was supposedly beyond the capabilities of any ancient civilization. Yet here it was, dated to a period when Egypt was still building its first true pyramids, showing continents that would not be officially discovered for thousands of years. The symbols scattered across the map added another layer of mystery. Some matched known Egyptian hieroglyphs. Others were completely unknown, bearing no resemblance to any writing system in the archaeological record. Were these annotations? Warnings? Records of contact? Every answer led to more unsettling questions. Every piece of evidence deepened the mystery. As the analysis continued, a team of geographers and cartographers joined the investigation. Their task was specific: determine whether the landmasses on the ancient map could be definitively identified as the Americas, or whether the resemblance was merely coincidental, a trick of interpretation and wishful thinking. The team began by measuring proportions and relative distances. They calculated the ratios between different geographic features. They analyzed the angles and orientations of coastlines. They looked for distinctive landmarks that could serve as fingerprints for identification. The results exceeded even the most optimistic expectations. The proportions matched. When the map was scaled to account for the ancient measurement systems, the distances between features corresponded to actual geography with remarkable precision. The orientation was correct, accounting for true north as understood by ancient astronomers. Specific features provided the strongest evidence. A large peninsula extending southward on the eastern coast matched Florida with mathematical precision. The distinctive hook shape was unmistakable. The map showed an island chain extending to the southeast, precisely where the Caribbean archipelago exists in reality. Further south, a massive river system was marked entering the ocean. The size and position corresponded exactly to the Amazon River. Tributaries were indicated, suggesting knowledge not just of the coastline but of the interior geography. On the western coast, the map showed a long, relatively straight shoreline with mountain ranges indicated inland. This matched the Pacific coast of South America, where the Andes Mountains run parallel to the ocean. The level of detail was extraordinary. One geographer, examining the map under magnification, discovered something even more startling. Depth soundings. Small marks along certain coastal areas that appeared to indicate water depth. When compared to modern bathymetric data, these markings corresponded to actual underwater topography. Whoever made this map had not just sailed past these coastlines. They had conducted systematic surveys. The scientific consensus, reluctantly reached, was undeniable. The map showed the Americas. Not symbolically, not mythologically, but geographically. With accuracy that suggested direct observation and careful measurement, but this confirmation only made the central mystery more profound. How did ancient Egyptians, 4,800 years ago, acquire such detailed knowledge of continents across an ocean they were never supposed to have crossed? To answer this question, researchers turned their attention to what we know about ancient Egyptian capabilities in navigation, astronomy, and maritime technology. The findings suggested that Orthodox history may have severely underestimated the sophistication of ancient civilizations. The Egyptians were accomplished astronomers. They tracked the movements of stars with precision, creating calendars of remarkable accuracy. They identified constellations, predicted celestial events, and used astronomical knowledge for religious and practical purposes. This astronomical expertise would have been essential for oceanic navigation. Evidence suggests that the Egyptians understood latitude and could determine their position by observing the angle of celestial bodies above the horizon. This is confirmed by the alignment of their monuments and by hieroglyphic texts that discuss astronomical observations. Whether they also understood longitude, a far more difficult calculation, remains a matter of debate. But the precision of the map suggests they may have possessed this knowledge through methods now lost. Egyptian mathematics was highly advanced. They used geometry for construction and surveying. They understood ratios and proportions. They could calculate areas and volumes with accuracy. This mathematical knowledge would have been necessary for creating accurate maps using projection techniques, but what about the ships? Could ancient Egyptian vessels have crossed the Atlantic Ocean? Traditional Egyptology has focused on Nile River boats and coastal Mediterranean vessels. These were reed boats, wooden ships designed for inland waterways and short sea voyages. Not suitable for oceanic crossings. Or so it was believed. However, recent experimental archaeology has challenged these assumptions. Modern researchers have built replicas of ancient Egyptian vessels and tested them in open ocean conditions. The results were surprising. These boats, when properly constructed and sailed, proved far more seaworthy than expected. Reed boats, in particular, demonstrated remarkable ocean-going capabilities. Thor Heyerdahl's famous RA expeditions in the 1970s demonstrated that reed boats could cross the Atlantic. While these experiments have been criticized, they proved the basic concept was feasible. Ancient peoples, with the right knowledge and motivation, could have undertaken transoceanic voyages, but feasibility is not the same as proof. Could the Egyptians have made such journeys? And if so, why? What would motivate such dangerous expeditions across an unknown ocean? One theory suggests trade. Perhaps ancient mariners discovered currents and winds that made Atlantic crossings possible. Perhaps they were seeking new sources of valuable materials. Copper, gold, exotic woods, plants with medicinal properties. The Americas were rich in resources that would have been highly prized. Another theory is more unsettling. Perhaps the Egyptians did not discover America at all. Perhaps they inherited this knowledge from an even older civilization. A maritime culture that existed before the rise of Egypt, before the building of the pyramids, in an age so remote that it has been almost entirely erased from the historical record. The map may not be a record of Egyptian exploration. It may be a copy of something far more ancient. Preserved, passed down through generations, kept secret in temple archives. A remnant of knowledge from a lost age. The discovery of the map has revived theories that mainstream archaeology has long dismissed as fringe speculation. These theories suggest that human civilization is far older and far more interconnected than orthodox history acknowledges. One such theory proposes the existence of a lost global maritime civilization that predated all known ancient cultures. This civilization, according to proponents, possessed advanced knowledge of geography, astronomy, and navigation. They created accurate maps of the entire world, including Antarctica before it was covered in ice. When this civilization collapsed, possibly due to a catastrophic event, fragments of their knowledge survived in scattered locations, preserved by successor cultures like the Egyptians. The evidence cited for this theory includes anomalous artifacts that seem to show advanced knowledge appearing suddenly in the archaeological record without clear developmental predecessors. The sudden emergence of sophisticated Egyptian civilization, with complex writing, mathematics, and monumental architecture, has long puzzled historians. Where did this knowledge come from? Did it develop gradually, or was it inherited from an older source? Another theory focuses on ancient contact between continents. Perhaps multiple cultures, independently or in coordination, developed oceanic navigation far earlier than currently believed. Evidence of potential pre-Columbian contact includes controversial findings of Egyptian-style artifacts in the Americas, cocaine and tobacco residues found in Egyptian mummies despite these plants being native to the Americas, and genetic anomalies in ancient populations that suggest transoceanic mixing. Each of these claims has been contested, dismissed, explained away by mainstream scholars. Yet the cumulative weight of anomalous evidence continues to grow. And the map adds a significant new piece to this puzzle. Some researchers have proposed even more radical theories. They suggest that the map might be evidence of a lost technology, perhaps a way of remote viewing or aerial observation that we no longer understand. Ancient texts from various cultures describe flying vehicles, divine beings with the ability to see vast distances, and other phenomena that sound like science fiction but are recorded as historical accounts. Could the ancients have possessed technological capabilities that we have not yet rediscovered? Technologies that were lost in the collapse of civilizations, buried under the weight of dark ages and forgotten knowledge. The map itself provides tantalizing hints. The level of accuracy, particularly in representing the overall shape of continents, suggests a view from above. A perspective that should not have been possible without aerial observation. Yet there it is, rendered in mineral pigments on ancient leather, showing a view that makes perfect sense when compared to satellite imagery. There are those who believe that human history is not a steady march of progress from primitive to advanced. Rather, they argue, it is a cycle of rise and fall. Civilizations emerge, reach great heights of knowledge and capability, then collapse and are forgotten. The survivors lose the accumulated wisdom, and humanity must begin again, building slowly from ruins. That if this cyclical view is correct, then the map may be a window into a lost age. A time when humanity knew more than we do now about the true scope and nature of our world. A time when the oceans were not barriers but highways, connecting cultures and enabling global exchange of knowledge. But why would such knowledge be suppressed or lost? Why would the map have been sealed away in a desert chamber, hidden from the world? As researchers continued their analysis of the map, attention turned to the symbols and markings that adorned it. These were not merely decorative. They appeared to be annotations, providing information about the geography they marked. Some symbols were recognizable as standard Egyptian hieroglyphs. These provided geographical labels, similar to modern place names. One symbol, repeated several times along the American coastline, translated roughly as "land of abundance" or "place of plenty." Another symbol suggested "great waters beyond," possibly referring to the Pacific Ocean, but many symbols were not standard hieroglyphs at all. They did not appear in any known Egyptian text or inscription. They were unique to this map, suggesting either a specialized cartographic notation system or the influence of a non-Egyptian source. One cluster of unusual symbols appeared near what corresponded to Central America. The symbols were arranged in a pattern that suggested text or a message. Linguists and cryptographers were brought in to analyze the sequence. Initial attempts at translation proved frustrating. The symbols did not match any known language family. They were neither Semitic nor Indo-European. They bore some superficial resemblance to certain Native American glyphs, but this seemed impossible given the map's Egyptian origin and ancient date. Then a breakthrough occurred. One researcher, examining high-resolution images of the symbols, noticed geometric patterns encoded within the characters themselves. Ratios, proportions, mathematical relationships. The symbols were not just writing. They were also numeric codes. When these numeric values were extracted and analyzed, they appeared to represent coordinates. Specific locations marked with precision. One set of coordinates pointed to a location in modern-day Peru. Another to Mexico. A third to the Mississippi River Valley. Were these markers indicating significant sites? Ancient settlements? Places of resources or spiritual importance? More disturbing were symbols that appeared to represent warnings. These were marked with distinctive red pigment and were positioned at specific locations along the coastlines. The most prominent warning symbol appeared near what corresponds to the Caribbean Sea. The exact translation remained elusive, but contextual analysis suggested meanings like dangerous waters, forbidden region, or place of great power. What had the ancient mapmakers encountered that required such warnings? What dangers or phenomena had they experienced that needed to be recorded for future voyagers? One section of the map showed what appeared to be a large landmass that no longer exists in that location. Some researchers interpreted this as a mistake or symbolic representation. Others saw something more unsettling. Could this represent a land that has since been submerged? Evidence of dramatic geological changes or rising sea levels that have altered coastlines since the map was created. The most enigmatic feature was a series of concentric circles marked in the Atlantic Ocean, roughly halfway between the African and American coasts. These circles were carefully drawn, suggesting significant importance. Depth soundings around the circles indicated shallow water, possibly an island or submerged plateau. Was this a navigation marker? A former landmass that served as a waypoint for Atlantic crossings? Or was it something else entirely? Legends from various cultures speak of islands in the Atlantic. Atlantis, the most famous, but also others. Islands that served as way stations, trading posts, or even the remnants of a sunken continent. Could the map be showing evidence of such places, real locations that have since vanished beneath the waves? The symbols on the map refuse to yield all their secrets. Even with modern analytical techniques, much remains unknown. It is as if the mapmakers deliberately encoded multiple layers of information, perhaps to protect dangerous knowledge from those unworthy or unprepared to receive it. What truths remain locked in these ancient symbols? What warnings have we failed to understand? As researchers continued their analysis of the map, attention turned to the symbols and markings that adorned it. These were not merely decorative. They appeared to be annotations, providing information about the geography they marked. Some symbols were recognizable as standard Egyptian hieroglyphs. These provided geographical labels, similar to modern place names. One symbol, repeated several times along the American coastline, translated roughly as "land of abundance" or "place of plenty." Another symbol suggested "great waters beyond," possibly referring to the Pacific Ocean, but many symbols were not standard hieroglyphs at all. They did not appear in any known Egyptian text or inscription. They were unique to this map, suggesting either a specialized cartographic notation system or the influence of a non-Egyptian source. One cluster of unusual symbols appeared near what corresponded to Central America. The symbols were arranged in a pattern that suggested text or a message. Linguists and cryptographers were brought in to analyze the sequence. Initial attempts at translation proved frustrating. The symbols did not match any known language family. They were neither Semitic nor Indo-European. They bore some superficial resemblance to certain Native American glyphs, but this seemed impossible given the map's Egyptian origin and ancient date. Then a breakthrough occurred. One researcher, examining high-resolution images of the symbols, noticed geometric patterns encoded within the characters themselves. Ratios, proportions, mathematical relationships. The symbols were not just writing. They were also numeric codes. When these numeric values were extracted and analyzed, they appeared to represent coordinates. Specific locations marked with precision. One set of coordinates pointed to a location in modern-day Peru. Another to Mexico. A third to the Mississippi River Valley. Were these markers indicating significant sites? Ancient settlements. Places of resources or spiritual importance. More disturbing were symbols that appeared to represent warnings. These were marked with distinctive red pigment and were positioned at specific locations along the coastlines. The most prominent warning symbol appeared near what corresponds to the Caribbean Sea. The exact translation remained elusive, but contextual analysis suggested meanings like dangerous waters, forbidden region, or place of great power. What had the ancient mapmakers encountered that required such warnings? What dangers or phenomena had they experienced that needed to be recorded for future voyagers? One section of the map showed what appeared to be a large landmass that no longer exists in that location. Some researchers interpreted this as a mistake or symbolic representation. Others saw something more unsettling. Could this represent a land that has since been submerged? Evidence of dramatic geological changes or rising sea levels that have altered coastlines since the map was created. The most enigmatic feature was a series of concentric circles marked in the Atlantic Ocean, roughly halfway between the African and American coasts. These circles were carefully drawn, suggesting significant importance. Depth soundings around the circles indicated shallow water, possibly an island or submerged plateau. Was this a navigation marker? A former landmass that served as a waypoint for Atlantic crossings? Or was it something else entirely? Legends from various cultures speak of islands in the Atlantic. Atlantis, the most famous, but also others. Islands that served as way stations, trading posts, or even the remnants of a sunken continent. Could the map be showing evidence of such places, real locations that have since vanished beneath the waves? The symbols on the map refuse to yield all their secrets. Even with modern analytical techniques, much remains unknown. It is as if the mapmakers deliberately encoded multiple layers of information, perhaps to protect dangerous knowledge from those unworthy or unprepared to receive it. What truths remain locked in these ancient symbols? What warnings have we failed to understand? As news of the Egyptian map spread through academic channels, other researchers began to come forward with similar findings that had been previously dismissed or overlooked. A pattern began to emerge suggesting that the Egyptian map was not an isolated anomaly but part of a larger body of evidence pointing to ancient global connections. In Turkey, a medieval map known as the Piri Reis map has long puzzled historians. Created in 1513, it shows the coastline of Antarctica with remarkable accuracy, including features that were not supposedly mapped until the 20th century when modern sonar revealed the continent's true shape beneath the ice. The Piri Reis map includes a notation stating it was copied from much older source maps, some dating to the time of Alexander the Great or earlier. Could the Egyptian map be related to these older sources? Could there have been an ancient library of world maps, now lost, from which both the Egyptian map and the sources for the Piri Reis map originated? In China, ancient texts describe voyages to lands far across the Eastern Ocean. These accounts have traditionally been interpreted as mythological or symbolic. But when examined in light of the Egyptian map, they take on new significance. Could ancient Chinese mariners have reached the Americas from the Pacific side while Egyptians or their predecessors approached from the Atlantic? Evidence from genetics adds another layer to this puzzle. Recent DNA studies of ancient populations have revealed unexpected connections. Certain genetic markers found in ancient Egyptian mummies show similarities to populations in the Americas. These similarities cannot be explained by modern migration patterns. They suggest ancient contact or even population movements across the ocean. Botanical evidence has also been controversial. Egyptian mummies have tested positive for traces of cocaine and tobacco, both plants native to the Americas and not present in the Old World before Columbus. Orthodox explanations for this phenomenon have been proposed, including contamination and misidentification. But the Egyptian map provides a simpler explanation. Contact and trade. In South America, along the Peruvian coast, ancient Nazca lines create enormous figures visible only from the air. Who were these images created for? Some researchers have suggested they were meant to be seen by gods or aerial vehicles. Could they have been navigational markers for ancient mariners approaching from the sea? Markers that could be seen from ships far offshore, guiding them to safe harbors. The more researchers looked, the more evidence they found suggesting ancient global connections. Architectural similarities between Egyptian pyramids and Mesoamerican pyramids. Similar astronomical alignments in monuments on different continents. Shared symbolism in art and religious iconography. Mathematical constants appearing in constructions separated by thousands of miles. Each piece of evidence, taken individually, can be explained away. Coincidence, independent invention, convergent cultural evolution. But when taken together, the cumulative weight suggests something more. A shared source of knowledge. A common ancestry of civilization. Or sustained contact between ancient cultures that were supposed to be isolated. The Egyptian map ties these threads together. It provides a mechanism, a means by which such contact could have occurred. Ancient mariners, using sophisticated navigation techniques and seaworthy vessels, crossed the oceans long before history records such achievements. They created maps, exchanged knowledge, and built a network of cultural contact that has been forgotten by mainstream history. But why forgotten? If such connections existed, if ancient peoples traveled the world creating accurate maps and sharing knowledge, why is there not more evidence? Why are such claims considered fringe or controversial? The answer may lie in the fragility of knowledge. Civilizations collapse. Libraries burn. Knowledge is lost. The Library of Alexandria, one of the greatest repositories of ancient learning, was destroyed. How many maps, how many records of ancient voyages, how much accumulated wisdom was lost in that catastrophe alone, and Alexandria was not unique. Throughout history, centers of learning have been destroyed by war, natural disaster, or deliberate suppression. Each loss represents an amputation of human memory, a severing of connection to our past. The Egyptian map survived by chance. Sealed in a desert tomb, it escaped the flames and floods that consumed so much else. How many other maps were lost? How many other records of ancient achievement have crumbled into dust? The map is a survivor. A witness from a forgotten age. A reminder of how much we do not know about our own history. We stand now at the end of our journey through this mystery, but we arrive not at certainty but at deeper questions. The map is real. The evidence is overwhelming. The implications are staggering. But the truth remains elusive, obscured by the passage of millennia and the loss of context that time inevitably brings. What does the map truly reveal? It reveals that ancient peoples possessed knowledge we did not think they had. It reveals that the oceans were crossed far earlier than we believed possible. It reveals that the isolation of the Americas was not as complete as we have been taught, but it also reveals something more unsettling. It reveals that we do not understand our own history. We do not know what our ancestors were capable of. We do not know what knowledge has been lost. We do not know what other secrets lie buried, waiting for a chance discovery to bring them back into the light. The map forces us to confront the possibility that human civilization is far older than we think. That advanced knowledge emerged not gradually but perhaps suddenly, inherited from sources now lost. That the story we have been told about the march of progress from primitive to advanced is incomplete at best, false at worst. Some researchers who have studied the map have come to believe that it is evidence of a lost golden age. A time when humanity possessed knowledge and capabilities that were later lost in a catastrophic collapse. The survivors of this collapse preserved what they could, passing down fragments of ancient wisdom through myths, symbols, and occasionally through artifacts like this map. If this interpretation is correct, then we are not the first advanced civilization. We are perhaps the second or third or 10th. Humanity has risen before, achieved greatness, and then fallen. The cycle repeats. We build on the ruins of what came before, never quite reaching the heights of the forgotten past. Others interpret the map differently. They see it not as evidence of a single lost civilization but as proof of ancient global contact between contemporary cultures. The Egyptians, the Chinese, the peoples of the Americas, all in communication, sharing knowledge, building a worldwide network of trade and cultural exchange 5,000 years ago. This interpretation is no less revolutionary. It requires us to abandon the idea of isolated cultural development and accept that our ancestors were far more cosmopolitan, far more connected, than we have imagined. But perhaps most disturbing is what the map does not show us. The symbols that remain untranslated. The warnings we cannot fully understand. The knowledge that was deemed too dangerous or too sacred to be made explicit. What did the ancient mapmakers know that they chose not to reveal? What secrets were they protecting? The map shows us lands across the ocean, but what else did they discover? What else did they learn? What knowledge was deliberately hidden, encoded, or destroyed? The map exists in a climate-controlled vault now. Scientists continue to study it. New analytical techniques are being developed to extract more information from the ancient document. Each analysis reveals new details, new mysteries, new questions, but the map is not giving up its secrets easily. It is as if the ancient mapmakers designed it to reveal only so much, to tantalize but not to fully illuminate. A test, perhaps. A message left for future generations. A challenge to see if we are worthy of the knowledge it contains. As we stand at the threshold of this mystery, we must ask ourselves what we are willing to accept. Are we willing to abandon comfortable narratives and confront the unsettling implications of this discovery? Are we willing to admit that we do not understand our past as well as we thought? Are we willing to pursue truth even when it undermines authority and challenges established institutions? The map shows us that there is more to human history than we have been told. It shows us that our ancestors were capable of achievements we have not credited them with. It shows us that knowledge can be lost, that civilizations can fall, and that humanity can forget its own greatness, but it also shows us something hopeful. It shows us that truth survives. That evidence endures. That even after 5,000 years, sealed in darkness, the record of ancient achievement can be recovered. The map waited patiently in its desert tomb for the day when someone would find it and ask the questions it demands we ask. That day has come. The questions are being asked. And the answers, when they finally emerge, will change everything we thought we knew about who we are and where we came from. The map is a window into a forgotten world. A world where the impossible was achieved. A world where ancient peoples sailed across oceans, mapped distant continents, and possessed knowledge that challenges every assumption of mainstream history. But windows work both ways. As we look back through this window at the ancient world, we must wonder, what are they trying to tell us? What warning are they trying to convey? And what happens when we finally understand, the map exists? The evidence is undeniable. The mystery deepens. And somewhere, in archives and tombs yet